Hello, my name is Nadine and welcome to Hop Along Studio. So in today's video, I want to share with you about how you can use urban sketching to help with your self-care. I believe it's important that we all have self-care activities and practices. And one of my new activities has been urban sketching. So what is urban sketching? Urban sketching is about drawing on location. It's sharing the stories and the places that we travel and we see in our everyday lives. And it's a really great way to chronicle your journey and be able to share with people through art what you experience on a regular basis. So when I started to get interested in urban sketching, I was able to see a demo at my local art store. The Calgary Urban Sketchers group here in the city was doing a demonstration. It was actually a really interesting time. I actually was able to meet the members of the group and actually view a lot of their sketchbooks. And what was so interesting about it was the idea that even though they were all sitting at the same location, they all had such a different style and different interpretation of what they were seeing. And with that, you saw so many different stories of the same location. And that for me was really inspiring. It's the idea that we all have a voice and we all have something to share, and that through our sketches and through what our impressions are of a place, we can really show others what our feelings were at that moment and in that situation. So what materials do you need for urban sketching? You really don't need a lot of materials. Technically, you only really need a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper to do sketching. But there are materials that do help the sketching experience to be more enjoyable, and that will maybe help your creative process. I believe that everyone should have a really good notebook when they're starting to do urban sketching. I actually have several different sizes of notebooks that I use, but I'm going to focus on two today. One of them is the Pantellic Traveler's Journal. These are 4x6 small little sketchbooks, and basically they come in lots of different papers. You can get them on black paper, you can get them in a bunch of different weights, but the ones that I like are just the plain weight paper. And I also have one that has dots in it, and this was a suggestion of my husband, who, being a draftsperson or a CAD designer, he basically was telling me if I want to learn how to draw perspective well, that the dots in this particular journal would be really helpful for that process. So it really has been, actually, as I've been learning to draw, just to be able to help me understand perspective a little bit better. And so these two, I usually actually carry the green one, which is a little bit more battered, in my purse all the time, and I usually carry some pens and pencils. And so for me, it allows me to really sketch anywhere and on the go, and I don't have to be dependent on having all my supplies with me. I can just have a pen and my little notebook, and I can create something as I am just immersing myself in the world around me. I also have my large Nature Sketch Pantellic sketchbook. So this is with a multimedia paper. It's a 130-pound paper. It's actually quite smooth, but it also takes medium very, very well. So I have a few different examples. So this one I actually did of a door in Chinatown. And so basically I've done this in pencil and I followed in with watercolor. And what's nice about it is, even though it's a tiny bit wrinkly, it actually held that much water really, really well. And to be honest, I went a little heavy with the watercolor on that one. So what's nice about this particular paper is that you can add a lot of moisture to it. It's a very smooth paper to write on. So the nice thing is it won't actually ruin the nibs of your pens. And it's a really nice book to use when you're doing some serious sketching. It was actually one of the people from the Calgary Urban Sketchers that suggested this particular book to me, and I've been very, very happy with it. But really, they can come in any shape or size. The key is to find something that is going to hold moisture well if you plan to do anything besides pen and ink, and something that is very smooth to write on. I would say if you have an opportunity, touch the pages of the book that you're planning on buying. You'll be able to tell whether or not it's a very rough paper or very smooth paper. And if you can't, then I would really suggest using one of the two that I recommended, because at least you know you're going to be getting a very smooth paper. And if you're not sure and you don't have access to either one of these, I would suggest looking at a hot press watercolor paper. A hot press watercolor paper is done a little bit differently than a cold press watercolor paper. It is actually extremely smooth and is used a lot for illustration. So having a book of that sort of paper also would be useful when you're learning to sketch. Another thing I would suggest is a set of graphite pencils. I have the set of favorite Castell graphite pencils that I actually carry with me in my purse for when I want to draw. It's nice because they come in a nice little tin. They go from everything from an HB to an 8B, and I usually stick with the HB or the B because I don't necessarily want a super dark graphite look when I am working just to basically create a quick sketch that I'm going to turn into a pen and ink drawing. So the next thing I'd like to discuss with you is pens. There are so many pens on the market that are great to use, and I just wanted to talk about what you should be looking for in a pen. So I usually look for something that will help me have good mark making. So it's being aware of, is the pen really good for detail? Is it very good for very large strokes? Do you like drawing very detailed? Do you hold the pen really, really tight, or are you very loose with your strokes? Again, that will change what you like in a pen. The other thing you need to think about is, what are you going to be doing with this drawing when you've completed it? Is it going to stay just a pen and ink drawing? Or are you going to be adding color to it? More importantly, are you going to be adding watercolor or some sort of paint or some sort of medium that is wet? Because if it is a wet medium, you need to be aware of whether or not your ink is waterproof. If it isn't waterproof, you could spend a lot of time on a drawing and have it actually get destroyed by your watercolors. And so that's something to really be considerate of when you are choosing a pen. Think about the mark making. Think about the waterproof ability of that pen, and that will really help you come a long way in making sure you start with a pen that is setting you up for success. So I have a few different pens that I like to use. These two are Tombow Fudenosuki calligraphy pens. I know I butchered that name. They're Japanese pens. They're actually extremely good quality. They come in a stiffer nib and a slightly softer nib. These nibs are quite small. They actually do have a little bit of bend in them. So what's nice about them is I struggle with the longer, softer brush pens. I find I have a hard time controlling them and getting these finer lines. And so what's nice about these ones, if you put a lot of pressure on them, you get the thick line. When you put very soft pressure on them, you get those really thin lines that I love having in my drawings as well. And so for me, it kind of helps me as I'm learning how to control a brush pen better, that instead of just feeling discouraged, I know I can use it in a way that really works for me. The other nice thing about these ones is they are waterproof. And so I use these and I put watercolor on top of them and I haven't had any issues. So the picture I had shown you earlier that had a lot of watercolor on it was done with these pens. So the next pen that I can recommend is the Sakura Pigma Micron pens. So these pens I really like for fine detail. I don't actually use them for more overall detail just because of the fact that they are extremely fine, and so I find that I usually end up having to write a little bit closer like this to get the pens to work properly. And they have extremely fine tips, so they're perfect for all those detail spots that you have in your drawings. They also come in different colors. This one is orange. I have purple, pink, blue ones. And they range from everything from a 0.1 up to a 1 millimeter tip, and they also have a brush tip as well. And so there's a lot of variety out there for being able to get the different weights of mark making so that you end up with a piece of artwork that you're really happy with. So one of the pens I can also suggest is the Faber-Castell Pitt pens. These come in a range of brush types and they come in a range of colors as well. So this particular set of Faber-Castell pens are all black, and I actually have 4 different thicknesses. I usually carry them in this little package, and that means that I can carry them in my purse with my sketchbook journal, and then I can basically do pen and ink drawings almost anywhere that I go. So that for me is a huge plus of being able to have this particular set. What I like about these pens is that they are waterproof. They're made with India ink, which does not run when you add water to it. What's also nice about these pens is they have fairly robust nibs. What's nice about that is that if you have a paper that's a little less smooth, you're not going to have issues with the nibs getting clogged or getting fibers in them that might ruin them over time. I love my Sakura Micron pens that are also waterproof, but they're made with the pigment ink, and I find that, I'm not sure if it's the way the nib is designed, they are wonderful for running on super smooth surfaces, but sometimes they have trouble with a slightly rougher surface. So in that case, that's when I go to these Pitt pens. So again, there's a little bit of overlap between the Pigma pens and the Pitt pens, but it's one of those things of if you have one and not the other, don't feel like you need to get the other, but they do have a particular usage case for me for both, so that's why I have both. So one of my very favorite pens to use is the Lamy Safari fountain pen. I actually have several of these pens, and if you want to see a full review on why I love these pens, I actually did an article last week and a video last week talking about objects that help with my self-care, and I did talk in length about these particular pens. When it comes to sketching, they are great for pen and ink drawings. One thing to be aware of is they are not waterproof. I have not figured out a waterproof ink that I can put through them that will actually work really well with these nibs. I'm still investigating, and if anyone knows of a really good ink, please let me know, because I would love to be able to use waterproof ink in these particular pens. What's nice about these pens is even though they are not waterproof, if you want some difference in your mark making on your drawings, what's nice about them is if you've already done a lot of your color, you've done your watercolor on your drawing, then you can come back in with these fountain pens and actually add some extra lines, add some extra details. So it's something to be considered if you do want to have some changes in your mark making, but just please be aware they will run in contact with water. So do not ruin your artwork by accident by assuming these are waterproof. So when it comes to adding color, I'd say one of my favorite ways to add color to my pen and ink drawings is watercolor. This is a Sakura Koi watercolor pocket-filled sketch box. That's a bit of a name there. But what it is it's actually meant to be used for urban sketching. It's used for like kind of plein air painting. It has a nice little ring at the back that you can actually hold it in your hand so that you can actually support it. And then when you open it up, there's a little tray that comes out. This is your palette. You can hook it on to the edge of your sketch box, and you can actually, if you wanted to, and you had a little piece of paper, you want to do a little postcard painting, you could actually lay it here as your easel. So basically you can hold it here and actually use your water brush. In this case it's in two parts right now. You basically take out the little tab, you put your water brush together, and you can use your full set of watercolors. And what's nice about this is you don't have to carry water with you. You put it in your pen before you go, and then you're good to go. And it's very easy to refill. So if you have a water bottle with you, it's very easy to refill on the go. And they have these little tiny sponges, which are also very good for cleaning off your water brush as you are working. And so this particular one has 24 colors. They range from everything from 12 to 48 colors, depending on what you plan to do with it and what you want to use it for. I actually use other sets of watercolors in my other watercolor work, but I don't take those outside the house. These are the only ones that I actually use outside, because it is so portable and so easy to use, and it is meant for this type of work, and the fit for purpose for me makes this a much more enjoyable experience. So if you're not into watercolor, there are also a lot of different pens and markers that you can use for coloring your work. I use a fair amount of colored pencils. I also use Tombow dual marker brush pens. I have colored Pitt pens. There's the Micron pens that come in multiple colors. There's a whole range of Copic markers and different types of markers that you can use for adding color to your art. So really, I wasn't going to get into that today. If you are interested in a video about that, let me know, because I'm more than willing to share about what I have and what I use in my sketches. So how does urban sketching help us with self-care? I believe it really helps us to immerse ourselves in our surroundings and be able to take some time just to rest, to observe the things around us and tell our own story. I think it's so easy to go through life rushed, and by taking these moments to just slow the mind, to maybe be able to process your day and how your body's feeling and how you are emotionally, can really affect how the rest of our day looks like. I also think there's something really important about taking the time to maybe meet up with a group of people to do sketching, because that way you have an opportunity to not only meet some people, but you have a chance to just connect with yourself in a really powerful way. I see this as creative meditation. It's a way for us to really slow our minds and be thoughtful and be able to work through things, so that when we come back, we're feeling rejuvenated and we can be more of a help to those around us, and we can be a blessing to those around us. So how about you? Have you ever tried urban sketching? If you have, I would love to hear about your experience. And if you haven't, I'd really suggest you give it a try. I find it incredibly rewarding, and I think it makes me look at the world a little bit differently after I've been out urban sketching. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, if you could like it, subscribe to my channel, and maybe provide a comment below. As well, I have my website, hopalongstudio.com, where I have other ideas on how you can have creative self-care in your everyday life. I hope you have a really great week, and I will see you next time.